Soccer Today is brought to you by Passion Soccer Boutique. Visit us at passionsoccer.ca for the love of the beautiful game.
Terminó هناك لشوارزنيجر.
Va a pegarle Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee joined by Duane Rollins. Duane, it's Monday morning. We had a busy night of Major League Soccer and Gold Cup. First of all, we have to talk about that upset last night. What a beautiful free kick by Jamaica. Kamar Lawrence to eliminate Mexico in the semifinals.
No doubt. Just to start the day off, well, it's Monday. You can tell it's Monday. I took a big swig of my Diet 7-Up. I decided to go Diet 7-Up today to mix it up from the Diet Coke, Pepsi, and started to choke. So happy Monday, everyone. And speaking of choking, because I like my segues.
Yeah, speaking of choking, Mexico.
Yeah, look, it was a stunning. Well, it wasn't a good free kick. I was watching this again. There's a great video I retweeted this morning where they put the Titanic theme music over it. And just all the dramatic scenes, it works quite well. You can just almost picture Celine at the front of the boat there. But I guess it wasn't Celine at the front of the boat. She was just singing it. It's Kate at the front of the boat. Anyway, I'm missing my 90s references early. It's Monday again, as I said. But no, it was a nice curling free kick. But the way the keeper was just rooted to his line, I couldn't help when I saw that go in go, Andre Blake would have stopped that. And Andre Blake is the story to me again.
Yeah, Dr. Dre. From Jamaica via Philadelphia. He's having quite a tournament. We've seen him play the last year and a half in Major League Soccer, and not necessarily surprised. He's maybe one of the sole reasons Philadelphia made the playoffs last year with the end of form they had. Andre Blake is hands down right now, I believe, the best goalkeeper in North America and one of the best in CONCACAF as we speak. Who else could say that they have eliminated Mexico almost by themselves, eliminated Canada almost by themselves? If it wasn't for Andre Blake, the St. Ricketts would have had more than one goal in that quarterfinal. To St. Ricketts, no, I'm Junior Hollett. I'm so not used to it. Junior Hollett would have scored on the second goal, and it would have been a totally different story. Andre Blake is the reason why Jamaica is in the final.
No, I don't think there's much doubt about that. And I would go so far as to say that even if the U.S. wins the final, and they are the favorites, I mean, they have to be, I would still consider Andre Blake to be the MVP of this tournament at this point, simply because of the performances in the quarterfinal and the semifinal. As you mentioned, those last 20 minutes against Canada, and this isn't us being Canadian-centric here. I think most neutral observers said the same thing. Canada had the front foot. Canada had most of the possession. Canada had 4 or 5 great chances and 2 or 3 point-blank chances that would have went in 9 times out of 10, and Blake was there to stop it, particularly that second shot by Houlette. That was curling and dipping and everything else, and the athleticism for him to get off. There's a great shot. If you see the shot from the opposite end, you can see the ball kid there with his mouth like gasped open as he saw Blake, how high Blake jumped up to get that shot in the Canada game. And the same thing happened last night in the first half in particular. Mexico was all over them, and Blake was there every time. To me, win or lose, he is the MVP of this tournament. It always reminds me of like watching hockey in the 80s, Kevin, where if you watch the Stanley Cup final, inevitably you knew that the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, which is the MVP of the playoffs, was always going to be the goalie because there was some goalie standing on his damn head. And, even sometimes back then we saw the losing goalie win the MVP a couple times. So Ron Hextall famously did that.
Jim Carrey? Didn't Jim Carrey do the same thing?
Jim Carrey didn't win the end because they didn't make it far enough. But Jim Carrey basically took the Capitals pretty deep one year as well, and then disappeared off the face of the earth. So that's unfortunate there. But for Capitals fans, at least,
he really did. It's talking about a flash. I still haven't found him, and it's been years. And I was trying to see if he's probably retired by now. But yeah, enough of this
Yeah.
hockey talk. But Jim
Yeah,
Carrey was interesting.
Get me out of Capitals talk, and I'm going to start talking about Al Holtby. I'd like to trade some of Carey's stuff because he's great in the regular season, but kind of mediocre in the play. Anyway, we're going to move on now. Go Caps. Not the Vancouver Whitecaps. We'll talk about them in a minute. No, look, what's this mean for Rosario? This is what he reminds me a lot of Klinsmann. I have this in the notes that I sent you this morning. If you remember back 2 years ago when Jurgen Klinsmann lost to Jamaica, that's when he made his famous little rant where he said, all these people, you take it because when you're in the job, they're going to criticize you, but it just goes to show how much more information, how little the American public knows about the sport, how much more we have to teach them. That was the famous Klinsmann. I think that was the moment that Klinsmann started to really lose everything, is when he said that after losing to Jamaica rather than taking any blame for himself. And Rosario, he doesn't quite say things as dramatically as that, but certainly he's under, the fire is under the feet right now. You'd have to say in Mexico, they fire for less than losing to Jamaica in a Gold Cup.
True, but the World Cup qualifier is going pretty well for Mexico. So there's that aspect. There's the aspect that they do know that he did choose like a C team. So what was the actual goal of this Gold Cup? Did it actually matter for them to win or not? And that's maybe the justification you can give to Osorio for the roster he chose. And it's kind of hard to judge his entire body of work with just the last 2 Gold Cups, when outside of that, at some spurts, like Mexico's last game in the World Cup qualifiers, they looked like world beaters. And at some point during the Confederations Cup, they had great runs too. So yeah, it's a little difficult to judge Mexico after their very busy summer with this Gold Cup. I do understand how short-leashed usually the Mexican national team is, and especially the Mexican fans. But at least I think because of his body of work and his reputation, I think he might be safe for at least 2017.
Well, they did give the Mexican Federation did give him the dreaded vote of confidence in the tournament. And the reason I bring Klinsmann up is because a lot of the complaints against Osorio are the same as Klinsmann has, that he plays players out of position, that he calls up bizarre call-ups sometimes that doesn't make sense to people, that he plays different formations and different lineups and everything else, that he doesn't seem to keep things consistent, which is all the things that people criticize Klinsmann for. And certainly when Bruce Arena came in, and I think Arena's 13 without a loss now or something. Like, it's the hottest start in the history of a U.S. national team coach in the history of the federation. So, there's a lot of sort of thinking there. But Mexico's a bit of a different animal, as you say, and I don't think he's going anywhere soon. But I do think that if there's any slip up at all in qualifying, they well qualify to Russia. But if there's any slip up at all, that they might go in with someone different for Russia next summer as well. But look, I mean, the story here, we're talking a lot about Mexico right now, and we talked a little bit about the States just a second ago, but we should talk about Jamaica a little bit here. Clearly, this is the second Gold Cup final they've made in a row. They remind me a little bit of Canada back in, around the late 90s, early 2000s, when they were doing very well consistently in Gold Cups, but couldn't do anything in qualifying. I think Jamaica's kind of emulating that pattern right now as well. 2 back-to-back finals. We'll see what happens on Wednesday in terms of their ability to maybe finish this upset run. And I think most neutrals probably are cheering for them a little bit here, because it's nice to see someone different than the 2 big guys and just that one outlier in 2000. It would be nice to add another outlier to it. To this, and I think it's, we talk about Blake, but their defensive stability, their ability to pack the middle, their ability to stay organized, that was as much key in that Canada game and against Mexico in that first half as it was Blake. Blake was there to rescue them at the end, and there were some opportunities for him to do so. But I think back, especially in the first half against Canada, when they were so preventing, this sort of Canadian attack from getting any real shots, any real looks on goal, that when they finally did break through, as I said, Blake was there. So I think you've got to give them some credit for being organized and getting their tactics right and taking this run deep. They found a way. They haven't been the most entertaining team. And in the past, I think Jamaica has almost looked to entertain at times, and they've gone away from that. And, well, here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Here we are. United States, Jamaica in the final. Let's talk about Saturday's game for a second, Duane. United States versus Costa Rica. And a great game for Dempsey, who did a great assist to Josie Altidor's goal, and then scored on a beautiful free kick that if you actually watch it, if you break it down, the wall of Costa Rica, after it was placed by the goalkeeper of Costa Rica, which it was kind of well placed, it was covering the near post. But as soon as he stopped, it kind of moved forward a bit, and then it changes everything. It opens up the near post for a curler around the wall, like Dempsey did. His 57th goal to tie Landon Donovan as the best goal scorer ever for the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, and certainly, I don't think Dempsey's ever been as beloved as Donovan or McBride or any of the U.S.'s other scorers through the years for some reason. And perhaps it's sort of he has a divisive personality. Maybe there's not everyone that kind of likes sort of that bravado, the deuce, so to speak. I think maybe he hasn't really captured the imagination as much as the First Love and McBride does, or the Golden Boy and Donovan does. But certainly you can't argue with his production, and he will end as the all-time leading scorer. I think we're all pretty convinced of that. It probably will happen. I'm almost forced to say probably, but there's a good likelihood that it will happen. In 2 days, right? So, and that'd be something to score the winning goal to win the Gold Cup for the U.S. first in a couple of cycles, and or not a couple of cycles, a couple of Gold Cup cycles, and then to follow up that with the being the all-time leading scorer. So, no, great goal there. Josie again showing his worth. He's having, club and country, one of the best seasons he's had of his career right now. Well, kind of quietly.
No, that's where I was going to go with this, Duane. Josie, when I was looking at his reaction after his goal and looking at his reactions for Toronto winning the Voyageurs Cup, I was right there. I saw his reaction, and the month, 2 years and a half in now with the Altidore to TFC. I don't think he's regretting his move to North America whatsoever. I think he's thriving and having the best moments of his career since coming back to North America.
I think that, not to pat Toronto on its back here, but I think that Josie kind of appreciates being appreciated in Toronto, because he doesn't always. Clearly, he wasn't in England where he became a punchline. That's aside there. National team, he has a lot of criticism over the years, and a lot of people don't like him here. But in Toronto, he is quite popular. He is one of the most popular athletes in the whole city. He's able to sort of enjoy the city in a way that I think that he hasn't at other times of his career. It's American-like without having the same pressures of being in an American city as an American international, I think. And I think that really has loosened him up and allowed him to excel this year. And it clearly is, on the club side for sure, which I see week in, week out. He is, in many ways, the most important player for TFC out there sometimes. And I think that has just translated and has given him more confidence at the national team level to allow him to excel. And he's been a key player for the U.S. in this. And as long as he can stay healthy, and that's always the thing with Josie, as long as he can stay healthy, he will be a vital component of their 2018 team. And I think that we all agree now that the U.S. is going to go.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, pretty much. But I wanted to say too, even on the injury front, if you look at his career prior moving back to North America, I think he did a good decision too. Yeah, there's a lot more travel involved, but being in a team of MLS with Toronto, having the time off when necessary, when needing to go to the national team or coming back, and having his playing time adjusted accordingly with a coach that understands how he needs to be managed, especially playing time, you do see the dividends of that. You do see the result of Josie Altidore being confident that he can go full clip, knowing that he won't necessarily have to overexert himself for the benefit of the team.
No, precisely. And that depth, the famous depth at TFC, as you rightly say, allows
it's a trope now. Like, it has become a trope. Yeah. Toronto's deep.
Yeah, the deep TFC, not deep enough to get a second goal against Colorado. We'll talk about that in the next cycle. But, it allows them to sort of manage the minutes a little bit. And look, Toronto, MLSE has a lot of resources. Say what you want about MLSE, you can't deny that they're wealthy. And that wealth allows them access to, medical procedures and things that they can try to do to keep him healthier and try and keep that hamstring less strained, so on and so forth. I mean, there's been arguments whether, the money is paid off that way, but it's another possibility here that he's able to get the type of, athletic science or sports science out there that has allowed him to maybe get past this injury problem. I mean, we all knock on wood. I'm hitting my head right now to knock on wood to talk about Josie's injury history, because we all hold our breath every time he stretches for a ball, because this is a guy that just seems to have hamstrings made of glass. So hopefully he can continue with that, because as we said, and what this whole topic is about, is this seems to be maybe his best season of his career overall on both fronts.
Exactly. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Major League Soccer action in the weekend with the Canadian Review.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
We're back on Soccer Today, presented by PassionSoccer.ca. For the love of the beautiful game, from gear to uniforms to lifestyle to culture, PassionSoccer.ca. Duane, few interesting results, but let's start with TFC this week. And let's start with the dreadful 20 minutes to finish the game. How many Colorado players were shot, or it seemed like every single player got injured in that 20 minutes?
It was, look, time wasting is part of the game, for better or worse. And Colorado fans that are pointing out that the TFC fans TFC should have scored more goals before that are absolutely right. And it's not why TFC didn't get the full 3 points in its completion, but it's also a talking point. It was one of the only other display of time wasting that dramatic that I've ever seen at BMO Field came way back when they were playing the Puerto Rico Islanders. And Puerto Rico was playing in the USL at that point, MLS versus USL matchup in the CCL. They got a goal against the run of play, and then Puerto Rico was dead every whistle. They had a guy who had cramps or had a mysterious head injury or something, and it was it's famous. Bill Gaudette was their keeper. I think Impact fans may remember him from back in the USL days.
LA fans too.
Yeah. So I can still remember distinctly, and for the record, Soccer Today does not advocate throwing beer, but in this one case, it was kind of funny, as Gaudette went down for about the 6th time to tie his shoelaces or to deal with a cramp or something. I can still remember seeing this beer arching perfectly over the goal and landing square on his head. He jumped up pretty quick, despite the fact that he had a knee injury at the time, which says a little bit. But again, we don't advocate the throwing the beer, but in that one case, it's okay to laugh because, Jesus, it was the 6th time he'd been down. However, this is the only other time that I'd seen something like that. And Colorado just so desperate to get a point on the road, their first point on the road of the year, that they resorted to the most cynical of tactics to get it done. And you know what? If the referee's going to let you do it,
exactly.
If the referee's going to let you do it, then this is what I said at the time: is look, really there should have been. They called for 5 minutes of stoppage time. During the stoppage time, there was probably another 4 minutes of delay. But if they blew it at 2 minutes over, they've got to. Really, they should be in my mind. And I'm not a referee, but in my mind, when you have a guy clearly injured, period, in stoppage time, you should be pausing that damn watch of yours and going, every second is a second on, regardless of how long it goes. And I think that there's just a reluctance to do that. And I talked to referees at the League One level about stoppage time before to try and understand it a little bit more. And what they tell me is that there's no guideline specific. There's no black and white on how to do this other than you add 30 seconds for a sub. So I think that you just kind of, if you're a referee and you go, I can't let it go 10 minutes. I can't. Well, why not?
Well, I think that's going to change though. And we might talk about this week, Duane, about VAR and the How Rib Q&A that happened last Friday, the last second hour. And I'm like halfway through it. And it's interesting though, because with the VAR process, they were monitoring some time stoppage, especially for the VAR, and they will add those automatically to the time. So the time will be managed a bit differently. It'll be a little bit more looked at. It'll be a little more accurate. So we might see games now with actually 8-9 minutes of stoppage time, maybe in the second half or something like that. That might be one of the consequences. It might be positive consequences that if you actually time waste, now that time is a little bit more tracked and it will be added on to the game at the end. So there's that possibility. But let's face it, Duane, no Bradley, no Altador. I think in the weekend, it was maybe one of the first time where it actually showed that they were missing those two pieces.
Well, maybe. I mean, they weren't able to break them down in the second half. They got frustrated. They weren't sort of having the same type of movement. And look, the kids that they stepped up and went into the role, guys like Jay Chapman did play very well, but Jay Chapman doesn't really have the same sort of fitness as some of those guys that have been playing all year, right? Like, this is one player off the top of my head, and I think that sort of plays a role. You got a guy like Aston Morgan having to step up. You've got lots of guys that did, and there was an article that Larson wrote today, which a lot of people accuse Larson of being an apologist for the team, and he does sometimes go a little bit on the positive side. We'll say that. But there is fairness to what he was saying, is that they, as much as it's disappointing to end this with the point against a team that you really should have beaten at home, when you look at the entirety of this condensed section, which just kind of ended, Toronto's now kind of through the thickest part of their season. It's more of a one week thing now, moving the rest of the year out. If you look at it in its entirety, it's hard to be angry at it. It's hard to criticize it too much. They came through it despite having so much absentees, so much injury issues, so much to sort of challenges. They came through it still, despite not being as much on top as they would have liked. They still are on top after all of that, and now it calms down. Now they'll get Bradley and Altidore back for the next game. I mean, they'll be coming off a Gold Cup, and maybe you rest them a little bit for one more, but they're there. You're going to get guys like Nick Hagelin came back into the fold and looked good again. I mean, he wasn't able to sort of close down on that last goal, but that was a complete breakdown by a lot of people, not most notably Cooper, who gave the ball away to start it out. So there's a lot going on there that I think that positive for TFC, despite the fact that game on Saturday wasn't as positive as maybe you would have liked. The game on Sunday upcoming, and we'll talk about that obviously on Friday, is a massive game, because I believe, despite the fact Chicago is the closest team to them, that the most likely team to challenge them for not only the East but the Shield is NYCFC right now, based on their form, based on their underlying numbers, based on the overall talent, based on Villa. I think I think TFC and NYCFC right now are the two most likely teams to win the Shield.
Well, it's a good segue. Speaking of the Shield, and a team out of the Western Conference that we were touting as a very big contender, like a very likely contender, was FC Dallas. And they've been doing pretty good because of injuries and a lot of roster being used internationally this summer for the Gold Cup and other competitions. It did hinder them. But if you're looking at Dallas in the weekend, full measure Saturday, great adjustment by Oscar Pereira. And in the second half, go back from a goal down against Montreal at Stade Saputo to score 2 goals. But to be quite fair in this game, Duane, Coleman, which striker for Dallas, hadn't scored all year. He was robbed of his first goal at the 20th minute. It was in. Lovitz cleared it off the line, but it still was in. Should have been 1-0 there, but he took his vengeance by scoring twice in the second half.
Well, yeah, and that speaks, I guess, to the depth that Dallas has. And you talk about memes or tropes or whatever, I think Dallas gets forgotten. And as much as I don't think they're a Shield contending team at this point, simply because I believe if you're this far down at this point, and they're 6 points down, but 6 points in MLS is quite a bit. I think people sometimes get caught up thinking European leagues when you're talking about stuff like that, but certainly I think that they are a contender to still win the championship, because they are damn talented and they're damn deep. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I had a sneeze there that I had to get out, and I couldn't stop that. At
Bless
any
you. It's fine.
Yeah.
But, that was exactly the second half in a nutshell for Montreal right there, what you just did, Duane. Because positive for Montreal, the first half, Michael Salazar, for his 3rd straight start in Major League Soccer, scored. And almost a identical goal as early during the week on Wednesday when they won at Home, Michael Salazar off a great center. This time was by Mancosu. Mancosu was on the right flank, taking his time close to the box, making sure he had the lane to cross to Salazar. Salazar, not that tall, with two defenders on him, still finds a way to put his blonde head on it and opens up the scoring at the far post on a header from Montreal. And for Salazar, Duane, a lot of people are impressed and surprised by his breakthroughs lately and how he's able to take advantage of his very little playing time and scoring. But I have to say, watching him most during games and in training over the last year and a half, Michael Salazar, his intensity, his dedication is up there. Like he's very, he's a hard worker, right? He puts in the effort every single shift, second, third effort. Sometimes to the level like Saturday where he's done at the 60 something minute and has to be subbed off, but at least he gave his full contribution before that. And I have to say, when we look at his work rate, I'm not that surprised that he's able to break through lately.
No, and absolutely, you love to have that quality in a player. You need more of that, more of that out there to try and get to close that gap that exists right now. And that's the question I have for you. At what point do you start to wonder whether that gap to the line is too big? It's 7 points right now.
Yeah, but it's 7 points. Yeah, but Montreal's 8 now, right? Because things got back to normal. DC's DCing. New England is, well, they're revolutioning. And it's close to Mutiny, basically. Philly Union, well, they're having difficulties. They are on a roll, and they are climbing that. So Montreal has to piggyback Philly and hope they can overcome Orlando and Columbus. Teams that, well, had an amazing beginning of the season for both of them, and it's hard to maintain that. And we'll see how things change in the near future. But I think the secret to beat that gap is next time Montreal plays Orlando and Columbus, they have to win. It's the famous 6 points game, and it's starting to be close to playoff soccer time for the Impact to make sure that they have an opportunity to be close to 6. Yes, Atlanta is climbing back, and we have basically the early favorites now above that red line. Still, I think Montreal on paper, if they are able to get all their pieces at the right time, figure out that chemistry between Piatti and Zamali and having both of them on form at the same time, Montreal, for me, is at least better than 8th. I don't know if they're top 3 contenders in the East. I'm pretty sure, actually, I know that they're not the case. But between 4th and 6th, if Montreal gets their players back from the infirmary sooner rather than later, I think it's not too much of a stretch to think they can pull it off from the end of the season.
Yeah, look, I'm not. They still have 2 games in hand with the teams that they're chasing directly above them. They have a game in hand with most teams in the league. For some reason, Montreal, it's a tradition every year that they always have games in hand. I'm not sure what that's about, but at any rate.
Well, it's about the fact they don't want to play too much at the Big O, so they're pushing games further as they can. I think the 7 next out of 9 are at Stade Saputo, or 6 out of 8, something like that. So there's the big stretch at home for the Impact coming. It's already started.
And clearly that you're going to need to make hay in that's what it comes down to. The 2 games in hand, the games in hand are, look, I don't dismiss them as much as some people, but because they are an advantage, but you have to take advantage of them, right? Like they're no good if you don't get the points. TFC had that a few years ago. I remember 2014 when they had a whole bunch of games in hand because of that start and a whole bunch of buys in the early week that everyone said, oh, they have 4 games in hand. Well, eventually those 4 games caught up and they, only caught 2 points up, right? So that's the key there. The home schedule, home heavy schedules are a hidden little thing that you find in MLS because it is such a home league. That's, people were talking about Atlanta. I was having a whole debate with a few people online about what Atlanta's high potential is. One of the things that makes a lot of people high on them, in fact, some people were arguing they're shield contenders, was because they have a 6-game homestand in September, right? That's absurd, and I don't understand why MLS does this with their scheduling. Well, I get it. It's because of venues. I get that, but
yeah, and it's because it's cold in Canada. Literally, I think that the fact that they're afraid, and even though we've seen the Classico in Colorado, they're still afraid for marketing reasons and for I don't want to say player and fan safety, but if it gets to -10, they don't want to do those too often. If you have to, like the MLS Cup last year in Toronto, you kind of have to when you deal with it. But you don't want to have to do regular seasons game at a regular rate, like a few a year in minus 10 degrees Celsius weather. And I think that's why you have the Canadian calendar, especially for Toronto and Montreal. Usually at the beginning of the season, it's away focused, and slowly but surely it becomes home heavy in the summer.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest issue with you go back to MLS Cup, there's 36,000 people there because it was the championship game. You're always going to get that.
Yeah, but you're not going to get that a Wednesday against Columbus when it's the second game of the season, and it turns out that it's minus 10 at the beginning of March, and you're scared to stay stuck to the seat. So, yeah, there's a big difference.
Second week of the season, Wednesday, minus 20. A lot of people wake up and they see that and they go, you know what? My TV's pretty nice.
My TV's not at minus 20, so I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to get 12,000 people, 12,000 diehards in the stands, and the rest are going to be at home watching TV sensibly. But alas, look, when it comes down to Montreal, I said what I said. They're going to need to take advantage of that. The only problem that they have right now, because of the slow start that they had, is they really don't have much room for error. And I don't know if you're going to call a loss to Dallas, because Dallas, as we said in the preview, I wouldn't call them the favorites. I think is exactly what I said, but it wouldn't be an upset if they won. And that's exactly what happened. So, but when, as you say, when Montreal is hosting some of those lower lights, they need full threes. They can't afford ones at this point because of where they are. Can they do that? Sure. They have the talent to. Will they? We'll see.
Yeah, Vancouver. Exactly. Speaking of, we'll see, Vancouver had an opportunity to string a few wins together, and just like the Impact, when they're having an opportunity to really stem themselves and get out of that hole, yeah, Vancouver is not as deep of a hole at all, but it's difficult to string a few wins together, and they dropped one at home against Portland. Yes, a very decent and good and full measure Portland team, but it's still losing against your rival at home 2-1.
On paper, yeah, but the lineup that Portland threw out there was the scrub because of injuries and call-ups, and that was the story of the game, was the fact that Portland sort of grunted out a win, in a Cascadia rivalry game, and got the job done. So,
well, the Whitecaps. You know what? I have an hypothesis on that, Duane. It's players that don't have an opportunity that finally gets one, that are not going to let that opportunity slip away. Same example, Callum Malice, best player for Montreal in the game Saturday. He was subbed off and for Piatti and Bernier, and the game turned, and Dallas was up for it because, well, they didn't have that same energy, right? That energy of when you're desperate, right? You try everything you have, you leave everything on the pitch. And players that don't have an opportunity, when you finally get one, you're desperate and you actually might be better for the team, and it actually worked out for Portland. But no Nagbe, Valeri, and other big names for Portland.
No, precisely, and they got the job done. And look, and all three Cascadia teams above the red line right now, although San Jose only a point back from Vancouver. Again, just as I said, I think this is my fault. Either way, I think I'm the puppeteer when it comes to the Whitecaps. When I say that I don't believe in them, they tend to overachieve. When I say, oh, maybe I'm starting to believe in them, like I did on Friday, well, then they cough up a hairball. So, Whitecaps fans, if you want to bribe me to say that I don't believe in them again, you know how to find me, patreon.com and all that good stuff. At any rate, no, it was just really a gritty game. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of flipping back and forth to the Shark, which was very disappointing. Come on, Discovery Channel.
It was a scam. I got ripped off, even though I didn't pay 1 penny for it. He didn't actually race a shark. Like, he wasn't like in the lane next to a shark. No, it was all contrived. It was timed and computer generated imagery. Jeez, I feel like I was scammed.
Yes, precisely. They were, if they had actually, had Michael Phelps show, because the Shark beat him by 2 seconds. So this is my, for next year, your Shark race. What we're going to do is we're going to put Phelps in the water 3 seconds ahead of the Shark, and then let the Shark chase. I think that would get ratings. What do you think?
In the same lane, yes. I agree.
Oh, yeah. No.
Put an idea of risk to it. That's what we want to see. Remember when Ben Johnson ran against that horse?
Horse, yeah.
Or like, I don't know. The most interesting one was Dennis Northcutt, football player. Well, the pointy football player in the States when he was playing with, I think it was the Cleveland Browns, ran next to an ostrich. But he actually went into the same cage in the ostrich and ran after the ostrich. That was actually more interesting because you have the risk factor of the ostrich turning around and snapping his nose. And that's what I want to see. Same for the shark, right? At least in a pool with like, put a plexiglass between the two, but like have the shark turn around, look at Phelps, and try to bang against the glass for a few seconds to see if it's going to disturb Phelps. That's what I was hoping to see. And well, I was left wanting a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, they Discovery Channel accomplished what they were looking for. A lot of us watched it, so there you go. I don't understand. Yep. I don't understand Shark Week. I don't like sharks like everyone else.
I don't understand what he has become. Like, I thought it used to be like documentaries and like a few interesting facts about sharks. Like if I remember, like in 2002, 3, 4. Now it's like Sharknado, weird things, and I just don't get it.
I'm pretty sure what it is that back in the early 2000s when they first started this thing, that you had a lot of sort of bored college students that maybe or maybe not had indulged in something that were just staring there going, oh man, sharks are cool, eh?
That's it, yeah, it's awesome, man. See, it's blue, it's water, it's calm, and then violence. Oh, I love it.
It's, man, yeah. And then eventually it became this cult thing, and now it's like kind of, excuse this pun, it's kind of jumped the shark a little bit. Did Shark Week jump the shark with Michael Phelps racing a fake shark? There's a question for the ages.
The answer is yes.
Oh, good God. Anyway, we were talking about the Whitecaps, weren't we? This is,
speaking of jumping the shark.
I want to talk about Dom Dwyer too. The Dom Dwyer rumors. I'm curious, Kevin, what your thoughts are.
It's more than a rumor, though. Like it's almost been like confirmed on both sides. A few journalists reported yesterday on social media that over the last few weeks, Orlando City has pursued aggressively their former star Dom Dwyer from Kansas City, and well, apparently Kansas City is listening.
Yeah, that part is interesting to me, and I don't want to Yoko Ono this, but I can't help but maybe wonder whether Sid wants to go back down to Florida again, and therefore her husband is looking to pressure Kansas City into talking to teams. I don't know. That's just a speculation because certainly she's moved for him before, so it wouldn't be completely out of the question for him to move for her. That's maybe unfair for me to say that. I'm not trying to blame her in any way. We all know.
No, but just looking at Orlando does have a history with Dom Dwyer. If you go back to before Dom Dwyer was Dom Dwyer, when he was a USL player known as Dom Dwyer, yes, but not with the reputation and credibility that he has now. One of the best player ever coming out of the USL time of the Orlando City Lions back then, and you kind of get the impression that a team that needs some attacking power, needs some help to help Kyle Lauren, you want to bring back maybe your former greatest creation in Dom Dwyer back home. I think it will be well received with the fans, and I think it's a move that answers both on the pitch, off the pitch goals.
Sure. I mean, I wonder what it means for Lauren, whether they would play off each other or whether they're anticipating that Lauren's moving on, although his legal situation, I think, has complicated that.
Yeah, right? If you actually get convicted of something, it becomes more complicated after that.
No, precisely. And it's so, it's something that we're not legal experts, so we shouldn't speculate too much, but other than to say certainly that is a factor now that's going to have to be considered for anyone. But if in fact Orlando knows that they're going to sell him on, then it would make sense that they would be looking to replace him. And Dom Dwyer is a guy that I think, has proven that he can score at this level. He's proven he can score at the international level for the U.S. now as well. That he might make some sense there, particularly with his history as part of that organization on a loan situation. The year that they won the USL title, finally they won the USL title the year before they went up to Major League Soccer. So there's history there with the fans, and the fans like him, and he's popular there with them, and so on and so forth. So there's some good feelings about that. Again, to go back to the Lauren situation, because this is a Canadian show. I mean, our hope is that this is a preemptive move because they know that they're moving them. My fear is that they have seen something in his game or are worried about, character issues or something because of this issue, and that they may be looking to give him less of a role. That would be a bit of a disaster for him. I don't understand it from the SKC perspective, though. SKC is a team that's really, really good defensively, perhaps the best defensive team in Major League Soccer. They struggle a little bit offensively. So why would you then move out your striker? Unless
you're expecting unless you're expecting somebody else, though. Maybe you don't flop him for Laramee. Maybe that's what you were saying, but maybe you're expecting a DP to come in. Maybe you're expecting it's a transfer market. It's the silly season. KC is in need of a name, right? They don't have that big name. Graham Zusi don't necessarily rings to the international soccer fans across the league, right? It's not a DP kind of mainstay name. So you kind of need, I think, a star maybe with Kansas City to break that ceiling, become one of the best. They are one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but to be truly considered the best team in the Western Conference, they might be one DP away, and this could be their chance. You find a way to get some value out of Dom Dwyer, and you turn that either TAM or GAM value or that DP value into a new signing.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to see this. Although, what Taylor Twellman was reporting was that it was Orlando that was driving the talks. So Orlando was pursuing Dwyer. So that strikes me as maybe not necessarily being Kansas City looking for DP, but rather sort of entertaining the idea that perhaps bringing in a lot of allocation or a swap for a player in a different position would benefit them. I have not heard anything about Lauren being involved in this deal. I just sort of was speculating wildly there, for the record, but nonetheless, it's, if you're doing a straight 1-for-1, which is something you rarely see in Major League Soccer, that would certainly be interesting. And it might, maybe Orlando's, maybe even Lauren's camp thinking that he needs a fresh start somewhere. Who knows, right? This is all early days on this, and trades are something that are kind of unique to Major League Soccer, so we'll watch them carefully. Speaking of trades, there was one involving the Impact of the Whitecaps this week. Any idea whether, if anything, Montreal wants to do with that $50,000 that they picked up?
Yeah, I have an idea. I have a hypothesis. And if you go back to what's been popular knowledge over the last few weeks, fans want Piet. Morbiello talked about how he was impressed by Piet. Adam Brass talked about a situation that Piet, I am interested. We haven't really started to talking, but I'm interested. And they exchange and they trade international roster spot for $50,000 of targeted allocation money that could be used to bring someone's salary to fit him in the cap. And if you trade an international spot, well, it means a non-international, which means we're in Canada here. If you're non-international, that's because you're Canadian. Who else? Hashtag Piet Watch. Get Piet.
All right. So what you're saying is both the Impact and Samuel Piet have swiped right, and now it's just a matter of whether they can get through that negotiation period, whether they're talking in the text messaging.
Yeah. Well, I think it started versus Curacao. You remember? I don't know if you watched my coverage of the Curacao Canada game. There was an actual Piet section, about over 300 Piet family members, fans, and people involved in his development as a soccer player growing up that don't have a chance to see him play a lot. Made a big difference. I think he appreciated the love and the support, which he's not used to having this support from home when he's playing because he's overseas. This time around, social media, playing in Montreal, having people talk to him and teasing him on like, come on, come play for us. And the fans' swell support has been growing over the last few weeks. I don't think this is a coincidence. And tomorrow night, there is the members meeting with the front office of the Montreal Impact with the season ticket holders. I'm not saying he's going to be introduced. I'm not saying they're keeping a surprise. But if you're a writer and you would write the perfect way to do this and to get like cheer at that members association meeting, that's what you would do. Are they going to do so? Do I have any official info or behind the curtains info of that? No, none whatsoever. Pure speculation on my part now. But having some ideas about Hollywood, if I was a Hollywood writer, this is how I would write it.
I long have said that, like we said this, I talked about this last week when we were talking about homegrowns and how it's important for every market to sort of approach their homegrowns in a way, or their signings in a way that sort of reflects the community. I've always said that, particularly so, the Impact, because of their unique character within North America as a French-speaking city, should really go out of their way to have French players and particularly Quebecois players there. So Piet makes so much sense to me in the Impact. It would matter so much for that fan base, just in the way that Bernier does.
And I think he's at the same level. Like, I think he could be the heir apparent of Patrice Bernier. He could be the successor of a Patrice Bernier in like the midfield type of role. He's known as a bulldog, as a pit bull, Samuel Piet. We saw this in the Gold Cup. We saw his maybe best game ever for Canada during the Gold Cup in the group stage. And he impressed a lot of people. And I kind of feel like I think he would be an upgrade on a Bernadello. Maybe I'm mistaken. We haven't seen Piet play in Major League Soccer day in, day out, and be submitted to the different alineas of the game here in Montreal and North America with the refereeing, with everything included that is a bit different here. So yeah, maybe I'm over evaluating him. Maybe he wouldn't be an improvement on a Bernadello. But I think if you're looking at the Montreal Impact roster right now, he would fit in the depth chart, second defensive midfielder, I think, right below Donadel or equal as a Donadel. And he sees himself as a Donadel player. When I asked him the question, he's like, yeah, I do kind of feel I am a player that's similar to a Donadel and an upgrade on Bernadello. So he'd be like in that discussion for me. So maybe that's going to happen in the near future.
I think Donadel would have trade value in the league too if he really felt that Piet could move up into it and take that position over. But the only caveat, I'll pump the brakes just a little tiny bit on this, and just with a warning, and that's the Julian de Guzman warning in Toronto. You don't want to overplay a performance internationally to sort of get too in love with the player. If you're a club, I'm not saying that there's not a lot of great things to love about this fit, as I just said, but my one worry would be that he would come in and he wouldn't quite reach the expectations, maybe the unrealistic expectations that some might have on him, and that in turn might have the fans turn on him, which is what happened with Julian. But I'm not sure whether the Montreal fans would do the same thing with one of their own, right? So we'll see. It's romantic, and I like the romance in the game. So I hope it gets done, and I would like to see Samuel Piet find a place where he's playing regularly and be able to develop more, because I'm pretty convinced from a national team perspective that he kind of reached his ceiling in Spain. He might be able to find a league somewhere else where he might be able to get to a top division, but I'm not convinced he's ever going to, find himself playing regularly in La Liga without consistently playing somewhere else first, right? So that's hope that maybe something happens here.
All right, that will wrap it up for today. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Soccer Today presented by PassionSoccer.ca, your place for the love of the game. PassionSoccer.ca, shipping across Canada and worldwide. And as always, until tomorrow, 10 a.m., I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.